And then I think it's yeah. Okay, so hi Suzanne.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, so welcome everyone. This is the first thanks for doing this, by the way. This is the first episode, the pilot episode. Hopefully they'll give us a full season. By they I mean myself. I'll carry on doing it. So this is the first episode of what I'm calling the work in progress podcast. I thought, you know what, like I'm not starting a family. I'm not settled down. I've not bought a house. What I'll do is I'll start a podcast. Like, you know, and another dude with a podcast. Like, that's just exactly what the world needs. So, yeah. But I thought, you know what, we're on this new creatives thing, which we'll talk about in a sec. They've lent me some equipment. So I thought, oh, well, you know, it's, you know, well, might as well, you know, try it out, you know, make use of it while I've got it. So how it's going to go is basically, so this is well, I'm trying to kind of have conversations with interesting people about what they're working on personally or creatively. And the hope is that we can kind of learn from each other and get a little better each time. And I don't know how I feel about this tagline, if I'm going to say it just the once.
Just do it.
I'm not
just
perfect.
do it.
It's because I'm not perfect. I'm a work in progress.
Yes.
Ding. Anyway, so a little bit about me. So I'm a Black and British writer and performer based in Leeds, UK. And my breakthrough collection of poetry is called Negrescence. And it comes out in the UK with Burning Eye Books in September 2021. And if you follow me on my things like Adekola Poetry on Instagram, you'll be able to see that. And my website is adekola.bigcartel.com. It'll be on there as well as on the Burning Eye. Okay, fab. So I'm just going to introduce my guest. They were kind enough to send me their bio. So just here's a little bit. Suzanne Pearson is a creative freelancer currently across television, poetry, and spoken word. She's Manchester-based, but is originally from Rotherham, and her poems stem from her own experiences, which usually centre around grief, joy, feminism, and anything else that may pop up into her head at any given moment. Okay, so please welcome Suzanne Pearson.
Thank you.
Right then, fab. So Suzanne, how's your day been?
Actually, just been very. It's been quite holed up in my little, what I call my little cave, when I get into like a zone. Shut the windows. It's rainy outside, and I've actually been editing and putting together the New Creatives audio poem. So I've never used Logic Pro before, and it's taken about a day or two to actually get to know the software. So today is kind of the final day I'm putting it all together, and I just finished it just as we started going on this. So I'm going to send it off to a few people and get their thoughts, which is scary.
Oh, fantastic. So, okay, well, we've kind of started on that. So tell us a bit about, so me and yourself and I were on the New Creatives North program, talent development program. And, you know, and I think we're on the audio one. So we're creating pieces of audio work. That's going to be, that's going to go out to different things, and then ultimately the BBC as well. So tell us a bit about like what you've been working on, and how's that's been, you know, learning Logic, what you've been working on, and just your whole experience with the New Creatives so far, really.
So I guess where to start. So I wrote this piece way back when. Actually, I was 17 when I wrote it, and my mum had just passed away, and it was quite a quick it was quite quick, and I didn't really know how to process it. So I wrote it down in a poem, and I just kind of backbenched it. And I've been writing poetry for kind of like, I didn't realise that it was such a thing until I started posting it, but on Instagram and such. But usually it was just kind of my thought process on how I manage things, or how I kind of put things in my perspective, or ration things out. It's how I make sense of the world a little bit. And so I wrote it, and then life went on. I went to uni. I actually pitched it a little bit at uni, but I think the feedback wasn't that great, and I was like, oh, but you know, I'm kind of really ready for this. And actually I realised I wasn't. And I kind of pitched it as a film, and I think that's also where I made the mistake. And this audio thing came up, and I was like, and it's kind of this piece of kind of grief and anger and all these combinations, like it has so many emotions in it, and it's kind of like a piece of my diary, if you will, of that experience. If I saw it in a film, I think, and because I'm so kind of usually quite visual, I think for me, I never could have hit the nail on the head with it, because I don't think it was ever meant to be a film. And so the opportunity came up for it to be audio, and I was like, look, I'm just gonna send this off and see what happens. Now, taking that back a bit as well, I also put it forward for a few poetry competitions, and it got rejected for so many of them. And I applied to one which was Brighton based, but when I was applying, I didn't realise you had to live in Brighton at the time. And so they called me up, they were like, there was a grand prize in it if you won it. And they were like, but it doesn't say that you're Brighton based. I was like, I thought it was just a poem for everyone, and it was just like in Brighton. And they were like, oh, we're going to have to take you off. And I was like, okay. But they were like, just whatever you do, keep going, because it was really good. And I think that was the first time where I was like, okay, maybe there's something in this. So that gave me the confidence to then put it to audio. And then I didn't think anything about it because of the pandemic and everything. And we found out almost a year later that we've got this, which is great. And I think it's also given me time to, you know, rest on it. And I feel I'm kind of now ready to, you know, I think at the time I couldn't separate the poem with myself. Whereas I think now with New Creatives North as well, we get to work with actors and composers, and I feel that gives me a really good opportunity to kind of separate myself from what I wrote and what is the art of it, and kind of like separate myself more. And I think that feels really good as well. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with it, and I'm quite happy with it now. So yeah, it feels good.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. So yeah, you've been on quite a bit of a journey with this piece. Then, you know, obviously from you know, it coming from your you know, from a tragic kind of you know, from a sad kind of place, and then to kind of you know, shopping it around, and then you know, having the knocks and things like that. But then, and thinking maybe you're going to make a film, and then to now in a place where you feel like you've got some kind of distance from it, but and you can kind of turn it more of an art piece, and rather than like you said, a piece of your journal or diary that might be quite raw and things like that. So yeah, so that's cool. That's quite a journey, really. And yeah, and definitely, like, you know, definitely obviously do keep going with your you know, with your poetry and things like that. And yeah, like you mentioned, it has been interesting in terms of yeah, when I had actually same thing. I had initially applied for a couple of video stuff. And I didn't like, I think maybe once or twice actually before for the New Creatives, and you know, like, you know, obviously didn't get accepted. And then eventually I did say to them, actually, you know, like, what's, you know, like, can you give me some feedback and whatever? And then they said, look, you know, your stuff's okay, but there's just a lot, just like, it's good, but there's just a lot of, you know, there's a lot of, obviously a lot of talented people out there, which is fair enough. Then they said, you know, think about applying for an audio thing, and then so that's fine. And then and at that time, the project I was doing first was something about dreams, because I don't know about you, because at the height of the pandy, like I was like trouble sleeping, like, you know, weird dreams, like, you know, scary ones, like, you know, sexual ones, just random, like, you know, just random ones. And then I was like, okay, then I looked up online and I realized, actually, you know, there's actually other people that said similar things. And then so I then actually made a workshop actually about like exploring poetry and dreams. And then again, when I'd done that workshop, people like responded to me, like, you know, the next day saying that, yeah, like, you know, they had really like vivid dreams as a result of it, and then they could relate as well to that. And then, you know, obviously, you know, like, you know, with the pandy and the scariness and all that, and obviously I think people were obviously worried about intimacy and, you know, like being alone and things like that. So all these kind of things. So people just got a good response, really. So that was the thing. That was the idea of the poem I was going to do initially, which was something about exploring poetry and dreams and things like that. But like you said, it was over a year ago and this and that, and then when it came around to early this year, when they contacted, you know, to say that, you know, you got on the program, I'd not I'd kind of like, I felt like, well, yeah, I'd dealt with that. Like, you know, I'd understood, you know, I'd dealt with that and whatever. So I went with something else. The poem I'm doing is one called Love Is My Mission. And it's kind of like an autobiographical poem about, like, you know, about my life so far kind of thing. And it just kind of touches on, like, you know, my childhood, where I growing up in, you know, being born in Nigeria, growing up in Saudi, and then, you know, mainly growing up in, you know, Leeds, West Yorkshire, and then all the kind of experiences that we had there, you know, with, like, you know, immigration, racism, Islamophobia, being public school system, being the eldest sibling in a, you know, a black working class family, you navigating, you know, high school, like, and all these kind of things, uni, all these kind of things, and, you know, mental health issues, and kind of overcoming that, and then just kind of just these kind of experiences, and then you just kind of coming more to a place of, like, you know, self-understanding, self-acceptance, self-compassion, etc. So that's and that poem is it's funny, that poem, there's a version of it that's in the book, my book that's coming out in September, but obviously the version that's going to be in the audio one is, like, because I recorded it just I think just Saturday, just Saturday actually. So we know, with all the notes and all the mentoring that they've given us and everything like that, it's taking it to, like, you know, a different place, and so I'm excited for that, and yeah, so I think I've had a similar kind of experience in terms of, like, you know, my mind thinks that was going to be something else, but then along the way on this experience, it's kind of, you know, been changed and adapted, and I did, as one where I did feel like it's good to have some other people's input on it and some other eyes on it, and have a bit of a distance on it, to make it more of a piece of art rather than, like, you know, just more of, like, a your own, more like more fresh and more raw and more of your own kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. But well done to you, though. I'm getting them to edit mine. I'm not. I thought, you know what, just how busy I am and whatever. I'm not gonna be able to, like.
I thought that, I was like, because originally I was like, you know what, I'm going to do everything. I use Pro Tools at uni. It'll be a walk in the park. And then I literally sat down and I went back to my mentor and I was like, you know what, I don't think I'm going to compose anything, and I don't think I'm going to edit anything, and I don't think I'm going to do the, like, all the little bits after, because I just don't think I'm skilled enough. And he was like, no, well, that's okay, that's, like, fine. And I was like, okay, good, because, like, that takes a lot off me. The only reason I'm editing it is because so for New Creatives North, when we did the audio recording, we got a 2-hour slot. And that 2-hour slot is so intense, and my mind just can't make decisions, like, really quickly when it's so important. And, like, usually when it's work or something where it's kind of like, oh, you need to make a decision on this, that and the other, that's fine. But when it's, like, my little, like, baby, I'm like, I pause and I freeze and I'm like, I don't know, I can't remember how the words were said in one paragraph as opposed to the other, or, like, so I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to go through it and just do the voice, and then luckily I'm handing it over to a composer. He's sorting me out tomorrow with the music, and then after that, I'm handing it over to them, and they can deal with the rest. But yeah, definitely, it's it was, I think, for just because of the speed of it, I just freeze. So it was good for me to look back on things.
I'm gonna add music to mine as well. I've just been speaking to a friend of mine who's like a sound engineer and like a musician as well, and so I sent them a rough draft of the poem, the one that's gone for editing, and then so I'm excited to kind of see where that is. I find it quite sometimes with the because when I write my poems, obviously I write them just bare in terms of on the page, on the laptop, whatever. And sometimes it can be hard to like fit music to it, because it's like you've written it one way to be said, to be to be read or to be said. And then so but that's something I'm excited to explore in terms of like how to add music to it, but make it seem more like natural and more and actually add it to be add-in and not to be just there for the sake of it. How has it been like for you in terms of like picking the music and
it was, I think the music was actually surprisingly easy, because I'd known this guy. So when I was 16, I also went on like a kind of like 16 to 19-year-old course for like people who wanted to get into film. And that's where I met this guy called Benjamin Squires, and he does really, really insane work. Like he's done trailers for like Netflix series, and he's just really good and really quick, like really quick. They were like, when I told New Creatives North that I was going to get a composer, they were like, well, it's a very quick turnaround. I was like, no, like he can do it in like 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, don't worry about it. And so I kind of was just like, in Atonement, there's this music that is centered around like a typewriter, the key of a typewriter. And I was just like, look, I really love that, but also it's just, I kind of want like a main hook throughout. But I think because we both kind of agreed that the music couldn't be too overpowering, because the words are what's most important, it kind of really needed to be simple as well. And then I literally said that and then left him to it, and got back the next day, and it was like, wow. So I feel I didn't actually give that much direction. He kind of just took it and rolled with it. But I think as well, it's kind of about trust, and I think I kind of like trust him to just kind of do it. So that was kind of really nice. And when I got it back, I was like, wow, it's like this is now art. This is now like like you said about that leveling up. It's just leveled it up so much, and I was like, wow, music, it's amazing.
Yeah, of course. Ask Fab. So it sounds like film is like quite a big passion of yours, and it sounds like film is quite a big passion of yours. And like, is that something that you are hoping to get into filmmaking, or
So basically, when I was 16, I went on this like small regional course in Sheffield, and then you went on to like the NFTS, where it was like 16 to 19-year-olds doing that. And then I decided that I wanted to do it for uni. So I went to Uni of York and did film. But it's such a tough industry. And it's also very middle class. And if you don't have, a place in London, a few grand in your pocket, it's very, very hard to get into. Again, I got a bursary from the Royal Television Society, and I got on another scheme. This is how hard it is. I've gotten like 3 schemes to try and use all my contacts to try and get a job in it. And I was a runner in TV for a year in London, and then kind of went on to a few TV stuff, and I did a little bit of development where you try and pitch TV shows. And that's kind of like my main job now, like where I get money. But I also find that creatively, I think there's always, the director, the producer, and I'm kind of like at a researcher assistant producer level. So whilst I have some say of something, it's not enough to be the whole creative process. Whereas I think it's so freeing to do audio, to write poetry, because I think one, I don't hold myself to such high standards, which is something I tend to do in film or TV, and I think secondly, it's also nice to have a break from that, because it's like when your hobby becomes your job, you kind of need another hobby. Because it's still work at the end of the day. Even if you do love it, it's still work. And I think when people are like, oh, I've never had to work a day in my life because I've been doing something you love, I'm like, I bet there's been some stressful days in an office somewhere doing something where it is still work. And I think another outlet for like my own creativity, because I think you said this in one of the talks that we do as like part of New Creatives North, but that you kind of love that poetry is kind of just you sitting down with a pen and paper, and there's no kind of no one else inputting their thoughts and trying to change what you're going to write. Whereas I find that visual arts, you know, you've got cinematographer telling you that they want to do this, an audio person wanting to do this, and I like that kind of, it's just you and a piece of paper and that's it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thanks for quoting me back to me. That's pretty cool. I was like, yeah. I need to attend more of those sessions. I think I'll drop some more gems. No. I hear where you're coming from. Yeah. I mean, you can get me if you want to get me started on like you know, the creativity and the creative scene. I think what it is that you know I think just like obviously creativity is society and it's so important for society, you know, like we were all being entertained during lockdown by obviously, you know, art that people have made, TV, you know, etc., the music, all the rest of it, and you know, and there's a lot of discussions out there, and there needs to be more about just the value of art and the value of creativity. And I think what it is that, I mean, you don't know if you saw that those government advertisements about so and so is a ballet, they should train to be you know, they should train to be a this or train to be a that, so and so does this, they should retrain, and it just kind of shows the disregard and disrespect that the government and certain people have for arts and creativity, when it's obviously, you know, and it speaks to you know, as far as I'm concerned, we live in a, you know, white supremacist, you know, kind of a patriarchy, you know, racial capitalism, you know, Britain's a colonial power, etc., etc. You know, it's not, the world is not really, it's not fair, and it's never kind of designed to be fair. So the government people like that, they kind of don't really like art or rate art, because obviously the history of art is like, you know, it's something that challenges the status quo, you know, gives people, you know, and obviously their whole thing is, you know, from their neoliberal perspective, is that if it's not making money, that why is it there? So then that comes down to you know, middle class. It's like, okay, so you know, they barely did. So a lot of people in the government, they don't really like art in general, but then they'll let some people do it and support some people, and those people obviously are like, you know, well connected, well to do middle class people, and you know, they've got their industry of they review each other, they do this, they do that, they say what's good, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's so there's that level of there's that level of there's that silent exclusivity of, like, you know, just not knowing the lingo, not having the connections, and so on and so forth. That makes it harder to get into things like art and creativity. And then obviously, you know, then you have other barriers, you know, obviously, you know, gender, race, and you know, working class, etc., etc. So yeah, so there's a lot it can be quite tricky for a lot of reasons. But in terms of, from my perspective, from the artist side, what that thing I mentioned about what the artist can do is I mean, I always say to people, you know, jokingly, like, poetry is my get rich slow scheme. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'd do it for the fun, for the love, etc. You know, who would be like an events organizer? Who would be like, you know, a creative? It's like, you know, as you may have seen, it's just so hard to kind of, you know, be you know, to make money, or to kind of be, or to, you know, to make a living wage and from it, and so on and so forth. But with that being said, from my perspective, what the artist can do is something like that gives you quite a bit of autonomy and quite a bit of freedom. Something like poetry, where it's like, okay, I write it myself. It's just directly from, you know, my mind to the page, and whatever, and that, you know, that goes where it goes. That's something that's pretty cool. But it's, you know, you have to give. It's about give and take in it, because to the best pieces of work are probably, you know, like, some of them are, you know, a lot of them are collaborations. You know what I mean? So I don't know about you, but like, I love team sports. I'm a team player as well. So there is something to be said for like things like making a film where, you know, it does take a few people in, and it is collaborations. But there's also something to be said for, you know, like whether it's whether it's music or poetry, or, you know, even stand-up comedy or whatever, something that was just kind of just all your own vision, your own ideas. So yeah, it's see where I go with it. It's important to have hobbies that are away from your hobbies as well, because like you said, you know, sometimes if you turn your hobby into a job, then it can then just, you know, then you might need another hobby as well. So it's interesting in that regard. But shout out to you though. You're working in TV. That's pretty cool. That's pretty exciting, and that's your main job. And how's that been?
Good. Like, I'm working on like a documentary at the minute, as like a researcher. I can't say too much about it, but it's very, very interesting stuff. I think the only thing I struggle with, I think this comes into being a freelancer or creative in general, is that there isn't like I don't know if in the next 3 months I'm going to be employed. And there's always that worry, and there's always that, okay, like, am I going to be kept on? Is coronavirus going to come down and, you know, cause menace again, and then production will be paused? There's a lot of imposter syndrome as well, because it's just you're just like, what? How am I doing this, and am I doing this good enough? Always, I think, for me. But it is a great job to have, and I'm so lucky. I kept on badgering everyone to get me on board, and it is great. I think the only thing is it's again freelancey stuff, because I think as creatives we or a lot of the time we'll struggle to know what our income is coming in from and how we're going to survive on it. And there's kind of a thing in television, I don't know if this is across quite a few industries as well, I think it's also in film sometimes, where during the winter months, I guess from like January to March, nothing gets produced because it's just too cold and no one wants to go outside and film something, so all kind of production halts. And so people are just unemployed for those 3 months, and then they kind of have to save up any money that they've had at the other time of year. So it's a lot of kind of like being your own, being like your own financier, if you like, trying to
manage
sort out your own pension,
your own accountant, your own
and I think that's something again that as a working class person as well, like, it would be lovely to just have a job and get an income every month, and that be like a pattern of everything. And I think that's what we are taught to do. I don't think I was really aware of what it meant to be a freelancer until I was just in the deep end, and you just have to go with it. But I feel like it's one of those things that you do get used to, and I am kind of settling in with it all now. And also, I think it's one of my mentors, shout out to Abdullah Adekola. She's awesome, and I kind of had a bit of a panic at the beginning of this year as well, because of obviously the pandemic, the instability. There's just a lot going on for people who are freelancing in TV at the minute. She was like, you know what, but you're a freelancer. You don't have to do TV. You can do poetry if you want to do poetry, you can do audio, you can write a book, and then you can do like 2 months of TV a year, and that's still, you know, you can still be anything that you want to be. And I think that's like, so, you know, like you've written a book, but you're also doing this audio stuff. Like, there is so much that we can do, and I don't think anyone should be pigeonholed. I think like a lot of the stuff that we do can be done for something else, or we can learn other skills that are similar and will be just as successful in them as other things. So you
know, no one told you life was going to be this way in terms of like, you know, the admin and the finance and of being a freelancer, being creative and something like that. It's interesting. That's something I mean, like right now I kind of, so I've got two, so I work for a mental health charity. And I work for mental health charity and also in adult social care. So that's technically, those are like my full-time jobs. So all my like creativity is actually like part-time and things like that. But ultimately my hope and plan long-term is to obviously that kind of to switch that basically to be like creative kind of most of my time, and then, you know, and to kind of do the things I'm passionate about, whether it's like mental health, well-being, social justice stuff, as you know, as in a part-time kind of fashion. But yeah, it is kind of it is kind of daunting, kind of worrying to think about, how you're gonna, make ends meet, as in a creative, in a creative space where it's like, there's not a lot of like 9 to 5s that with pension and this and that and all these kind of things, especially maybe at at the early stages of your career, and and there's not a lot of and also making that, and it being where you have the kind of level of creative expression that you want versus the level of stability that you want. I think a lot of times it's like, you can have a lot of stability, but it's not necessarily maybe the kind of thing that you want to be doing, and then vice versa. Sometimes you can have a lot of creative expression or whatever, but it's, you're doing it yourself and making it all yourself, or you are kind of or it's just not very well compensated. So yeah, it's tough, but it's tough. I will look out for that documentary. That does sound interesting that you're working on. That does sound interesting. I did my so I actually made a film earlier this year. I wrote, so it's about David Oluwale. So he's a person that lived in Leeds, about over 50 years ago, and he came from Nigeria. Had a difficult experience, racism, police brutality, mental health issues, and he had a tragic end. Died at the hands of police, and I think it was the police were actually. It was one of the first times where it was recognised that the police were involved in someone's death, really, in the UK. So I got approached by a couple of students from Leeds Beckett Film School, and they were like, because they saw that I was on the board of the David Oluwale Memorial Association, and then so they said, do you write poems? So do you think you could write a poem for this short film that we want to make? And it's going to be like a docudrama. So I wrote that, and I acted in it, as David and stuff like that. And so yeah, it was an interesting experience. It was I obviously I know a bit about David's life story, and was inspired by another poem by Ian Duhigg, and so I wrote that and acted in it. But I tell you, so that was the fun thing about that, was working in part of a team. So it was like 2 filmmakers, and 2 or 3 other actors. So it was how many of us were there? We could all fit in a car, basically. Everybody that worked on that shoot, and it was fun. But it was a bit obviously in the scenes and the instances where he's getting harassed and whatever. It was kind of hard, and it was kind of like starting to not like the people I was working with, because obviously they were playing as the police who were, like harassing David and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, cool. That's what I like. I'm not, and it speaks to a whole other conversation about trauma and about and Black people having to feel like or having to kind of portray their trauma in film, or even mention whether being working class, and even the kind of the poems that we've decided to write. It's like I don't know, what's the fine line between kind of drawing upon genuine and valid life experiences, that can sometimes be traumatic, versus like making the art that that you want to make. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyway, so I just kind of, when I was doing that, I was like, okay, I think this is the last kind of one of these that I'm going to do for a while. These kind of like someone being oppressed and whatever. Like it's the next like, if I'm going to be involved in a film, or especially something that's kind of where I have a lot of creative input in it like that, it'll be like a period. I'll be like a gangster, it'll be like a period piece, or I'll be I don't know, maybe a cowboy or a gangster, or I don't know, a comedy, or a romantic comedy, maybe. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. That's a bit of a tangent, but I just feel like it speaks to a different thing about like you don't want to not show those traumatic experiences in the art, but you also kind of don't want to be just keeping on putting those images out there as well.
I think there was an interview actually that I saw briefly on Twitter with Candice Brave, I think her last name is, but
Brathwaite. Candice Brathwaite. I love her.
And she was like, I won't be able to sum it up as she summed it up, but she was like, I'm, part of me does want to, fight racism and sexism and all this stuff, but I wasn't put on this earth just to suffer,
Exactly.
I want to show joy as well. And I think that points like what you just said kind of rings so true.
I mean, it's you want a breadth of experiences. You know what I mean, that's you want to be able to, you want a breadth of experiences. That's kind of that's what. That's because that's you being allowed to be a human being, you know. You being allowed to be a human being is like, oh yeah, you don't have to be like perfect, or you don't have to be like, you don't have to be a victim, or you don't have to be perfect, you know. And this, you know, or this magical, you can be just like, like you're just a person, just, you know. So yeah, that's the hope, and that's the direction. But that's fab. So I think we've talked a lot of creative stuff inside, inside baseball creative stuff. So I'm just gonna maybe touch on a few other things before I'll let you go. It's feeling like I feel like, yeah, this has been fun. If you could tell us a bit about you were in New Zealand, or in a, you know, I don't know, before or during a pandemic. What was that like?
So what actually happened was I started, I mean, this comes into a bit of poetry as well. So I started publicating stuff. I lived in Leeds for 2 months because I got a job there.
Oh wow!
For 2 months. Yeah, so I'm
based in Leeds.
Oh. If you ever
want to come back round, I'll show you around.
Sure. My boyfriend's actually from Leeds as well, so we pop there a fair bit now. But when I lived there, I had a completely different experience to him. I wasn't really enjoying it that much. I had a landlord who just had sex really, really loudly all the time. And like, I just, you know, I was going through my 23-year-old life crisis, which I think everyone has to go through at some point. And I was just like, I don't think this is for me anymore. I think I need a change of pace. I think, again, I think TV was beginning to overwhelm me. I felt kind of burnt out in myself, and living in London, I couldn't afford to save up to go anywhere. So when I got the jobs in Leeds, I just moved into a little flat share that was, with the landlord, that was just like a quick walk to work, so I didn't have to spend any money going to and from work. And I just thought, you know, I'll see how these 2 months go. If they employ me anymore, that's great. But if not, I'll just save up this money and go. So that's what I did, and in January 2020, what an unfortunate time to go away, I got a plane and went to New Zealand. I landed in Auckland. I'd only booked a hostel for 3 days, and I just didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I haven't had a plan. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got this amount of money. I'm only going to have to, like, I don't know how I'm going to travel around places. I was meant to travel with this girl who couldn't drive, but she wanted to be in Auckland for a bit longer, and I was just like, you know what, I feel like I'm ready to travel and ready to go on, and I don't want to be, I'm on my own. And I think part of the freedom of being on your own is that you get to make all your choices. So I met this girl in a bunker in the hostel, and she was just saying, we just said hello a few times. Her name was Emily, and I was like, oh, I write a bit of poetry. I started my poetry account in November 2019, so this was only like a month or two after. And I was like, there's a gig, there's a spoken word gig happening if you want to come and join me. And she was like, oh yeah, sure, let's go. Anyway, what happened is we ended up just speaking so much that we missed the event. But I left, and then she said that she was leaving the next day. So I put a little note under her bed giving her my number, which I realise is a bit creepy now, but she added me, went off on her next adventure, and then was like, I'm up in the Bay of Plenty, I think it's called, and we're just by the beach, just grab a bus and come join us. So I finished my hostel, I went up, I booked another hostel there, and then I just kind of went round the whole of kind of New Zealand. And then in March I decided that I wanted to just fly back and start looking for work. And during my travels, I'd met this girl called Polly. It was amazing, and she was travelling with a Canadian called Epi, and we decided that we were going to get a place together, and we just started working in a museum. It's called Tapapa. It's like the Museum of Wellington, and we got there, and it was a 0-hour contract for the museum, and the people that we were subletting off were Irish, and it was because they were meant to go to Ireland. So within like a week, everything in New Zealand shut down. I think there was only like 50 cases there at the time, but everything shut down, and then we got a text message to say that we got like 48 hours to get out of New Zealand through Australia before all the borders close. So it's just chaos. It's just chaos. And then so then I just bought a flight. It was just like I'll just go. Like, my options are to stay in an Airbnb for a month whilst this kind of all blows over, or to fly back. But like, I didn't have any income. Like, I couldn't. We weren't working because there wasn't. The museum was closed, and when the museum closed, I was like, we've got to get out of here. So then I flew back. It was a sweet month and a half living there, but I feel it was worth it. Really, again, liberated that kind of feel of failure that I was having of everything.
Yeah, I mean, you sound like a real adventurer. That sounds like a real adventure. I think there might be a film, or there's something in there. I doubt that, God forbid we have experienced another pandemic. It's not, it's not impossible, but hopefully we don't. But yeah, those set of circumstances I don't think are going to happen again, where you kind of, you're stranded, and that sounds wow. That sounds wow. Okay. That's amazing. And then, it seems like you've Rotherham, Leeds, London. You also seem to be like someone that likes an adventure as well. So yeah, good for you.
I actually grew up as well in Spain from 6 to 13. My parents just decided to move there to this very small town. So I feel that's kind of that started.
It's in your spirit, kind of.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy to just be in one place now for a bit.
Yeah.
I think that's something that, I don't know if you're the same. I guess the pandemic has made me just be a bit more like a home person now. I kind of want my home to be really nice as opposed to everything else. But I think that's changed probably more because of the pandemic than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think how it's helped me is it's made it more okay to be alone, in terms of like, there's not those questions of like, oh, are you, are you off out with your mates, or like, when are we getting together, and who are you see, like, you couldn't, I didn't feel like it wasn't cool to be like, yeah, I'm going on a walk, I'm just staying at home. Like, you always kind of, before, I felt like, for that FOMO, fear of missing out, I always kind of had to have something lined up, someone to see, this, that, and the other, and so it made it, it kind of put everything on a bit of a pause, and that made it okay. And I think those like walks and like just taking the time out to do things just for yourself or just by yourself, I think that's something I'm going to keep up as well. And for me, in terms of, so in the past couple of weeks, I've been observing Ramadan, so like I've been fasting, etc. So that's been like, even though we're kind of opening up now, April to have opened up, but obviously with fasting and stuff, so I'm still so that's kind of even added another layer of like kind of like slowing down and introspection and things like that. It's interesting. I do want to I do want to like maybe spend a year living in London and just trying to experiencing that. Also America, just because I've got some family there, and then also just because it's I'm so influenced by America, and then it's just all the different, it's just so many different vibes, so many different experiences all in one place. So there's that, and yes, a lot of and then also I'm excited to kind of be able to visit Nigeria as well, just because obviously family are there, my heritage and family are there and things like that. So excited to kind of travel and see what we can see after the world opens up, but then at the same time I'm thinking to myself, like, maybe settle down, start a place, get a place or whatever. So I'm not too sure. I'm just keeping my options open really at the moment. It's hard to kind of really make too many plans, I feel. Okay. That's fab. Is there anything that just if it's all right with you, we're gonna just wrap up. Is there anything that like is worth us knowing to know? Like obviously you're doing a new creatives project that you're working on. Is there anything else that we need to know? And where can people like follow your stuff?
If you go on Suzy and then it's so SUZY _ poetry, that's where you can find all my poetry. My normal Instagram is Suzanne Pearson and _ it is private though, so I feel like people fancy a follow and like I've seen them or know of them, then I'll definitely like say yes, but that one's a bit more private. That's fine. If you know me in real life, you can follow me on the private. Yeah, exactly. everyone gets that. Everyone gets that by now. Like, come on, no weirdos, please. But otherwise, I am going to make a little page for myself or a website or a link tree or something, because I feel that's what I should do. However, I just haven't got around to it yet. But there will be, hopefully, one day.
Fab.
Yeah, that's everything, I think.
Okay, fab. Well, Suzanne, thanks for being the first guest on this on this show. I really enjoyed chatting, and I can't wait to hear what you can't wait to hear obviously what you do in your creatives, your audio piece, and then also obviously just all the other stuff you've got going on. Thanks for doing this. I think you're dope. I think you're gonna be fine. And and let's maybe we'll do this like a few months from now or a year from now, and do it again. And feel free to, if you've got anything that you want me to get involved in, just ask.
A coffee and Leeds at some point.
Yeah, coffee in Leeds or Manchester, wherever really. So that's it. Thanks for doing this. Have a nice rest of the day.
You too. See you later.
Okay. Take care. Bye.